Hi, welcome to today's webinar and panel discussion. It's part of the KaiNexus Continuous Improvement webinar series. I'm Mark Graban, your host and moderator today, and somewhat a panelist. I'm a senior advisor with KaiNexus. This is the latest in our Ask Us Anything series featuring the KaiNexus Lean Strategy team. So we're joined today. Our two main panelists are from that team. You'll learn more about them in a minute. They are Vicaro, our Director of Lean Strategy, and Lynn Howell, Senior Lean Strategist with KaiNexus. You see their email addresses on screen. We're going to be answering your questions today. And if you'd like to have a more in-depth discussion with any of us on these topics, we'd be happy to do that. And again, there's our email addresses, or you can reach out through kainexus.com, our website. So we're going to do introductions and tell you a little bit about the Lean Strategy team. Linda, if you could start off, tell us about yourself, your professional background, your career. I don't know if I'm going to force a fun fact. If you want to add a fun fact, feel free.
Sure, I could probably accommodate that. So my name is Linda Vicaro. I'm the Director of Lean Strategy here at KaiNexus, and I have been doing continuous improvement for almost 20 years. I got here kind of circuitously, and I have a master's degree in communication. I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, if you weren't here for the sound check. And I have worked primarily in healthcare. In a previous position, I actually was leading continuous improvement work through the support of KaiNexus as our technology, and that's how I found KaiNexus. And I spent a little bit of time. I spent about 6 years using KaiNexus there, and then spent a little bit of time elsewhere, and found my way back to KaiNexus when a position was available here. And I've been here for about 2 years, which has been a really cool opportunity for a lot of reasons, but partially just the ability to see how so many different organizations are practicing lean and continuous improvement in its many forms. And I've learned a ton and have really enjoyed the work that I do here. So.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you for being part of the team. Thank you for being here today. Lynn, let's turn it over to you. Do you have a fun fact, Linda?
Oh, yeah. I think that probably my funnest fact is that I make balloon animals. So
you do a great job
which
with
the
that.
KaiNexus
Balloon arches and all kinds. Not today, though.
Not today.
We're not taking balloon animal requests. Only questions about ask us anything continuous improvement related. Okay.
That could be an interesting webinar, though. Balloon animal requests.
We did say ask us anything, so we'll see if anyone. We can say no, but people could ask. All right, Lynn. Okay, now for real, we'll turn it over to you.
As mentioned before, my name is Lynn Howell. I'm from southeastern Ohio, around Marietta area. I live basically in the middle of nowhere, so it's kind of closest town. My background is, I think most people that go to continuous improvement are kind of find their way there. I started as a respiratory therapist. That's what my background is in. I got to experience a lot of continuous improvement as a frontline staff member, participating in Kaizen events as my organization started moving in that direction. And then I moved into some management, got more exposure, and then finally made my way to the continuous improvement team at the healthcare organization that I worked at. I did that for about 6 years. And I also was a customer of KaiNexus there. I learned the platform, was part of the launch as a user, and it was a great experience. I did leave there and go and do some consulting work throughout the US for a couple of years. And throughout that time, I kept saying, man, you guys really need KaiNexus. All these people would be so much better if they had KaiNexus. And I told them that during my interview. I was like, that's not even hire me because of that. It's true. So that's kind of, I was lucky enough that a position opened up when I was looking for a job, and that's why I'm here today.
Well, good. I'm glad you're here. What's a fun fact other than living in the middle of nowhere?
Oh, man. I think I don't have very many fun facts. I read a lot, and I'm a mom, so I spend a lot of time with my 7-year-old. So that's a lot of
There we go. Well,
sports
I'm sure
stuff.
that's more fun than not. So that's good to know. And since I was told I could be an honorary member of the Lean Strategy team here today, Linda and Lynn are the main panelists. I may chime in a little bit if I feel like it while moderating. But I've been with the KaiNexus team now for 13 years. I hit that milestone, I think, officially on Monday. Long-time role, part-time role, full-time belief in the company, doing different things, including running the webinar series and trying to be a good help to KaiNexus when I can. I'm in North Texas today. That's not my fun fact. I'm just saying where I am. And fun fact, beyond any sort of lean certification, about 2 years ago, I got what's called a level 2 certification in spirits from an organization called the WSET. So it's sort of like a wine sommelier. I can't use that term, and they don't use that term when it comes to spirits. But that was a pandemic project just to kind of learn more about bourbon, et cetera, and how it's made and all of that. So, fun fact: not drinking bourbon now. Don't worry, just water. All right. I was hoping that would be a fun fact, but all right, fun enough. So to the questions about continuous improvement, we're going to start off, and again, we're doing this in kind of a panel format, so either of you feel free to jump in. How can we effectively communicate the value of continuous improvement to our leadership and get their buy-in?
Well, I'm happy to start us off.
Please.
I think the first step in figuring out how to communicate the value is to make sure that you're measuring improvement and measuring the impact of the work that you're doing. One of the things that we see a lot in the work that we do with a whole variety of people doing continuous improvement work is that we're not always great at measuring the impact of the work we do. I feel like when I was on the floor practicing continuous improvement, I preached a lot on the importance of data, and I didn't always do a great job of making the case for continuous improvement myself when it came my turn. So making sure that you have the data to share with leadership is a really good first step.
Mm-hmm.
I'll add to that as well. I think one of the really good ways to effectively communicate is know what the leaders want to know and hear. Me and Linda have a lot of discussions on this, and our recent discussion was some people really like stories and some people really like data, and you need to kind of marry the both to be able to let them find the value. So I think that's important to know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And I think there's the question could come from a couple of different perspectives. Like if an organization is already practicing continuous improvement, like you're both saying, data, stories, benefits can be tabulated and captured in different ways, including in KaiNexus, as our customers do. There's maybe a related scenario, and I don't know if this is exactly the background for the question that came in, is, if we're trying to help get started, and I'll pose maybe a related question. So let's say an organization's been doing projects, they've been training people. Let's say they're doing some Kaizen events or whatever term they might use. But a lot of times I know, continuous improvement practitioners are trying then to also get the ongoing daily continuous improvement going, or the small Kaizen that might not have the big impressive seeming ROI of a project. How might you try to engage a leader to say, hey, let us try engaging people in this type of Kaizen or continuous improvement as well?
I think I'm trying to think through the question there.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in talking with leadership, like Lynn was just saying, a really important part there is making sure that you have a good understanding of what's important to them. And so you have a project that you want to try to take on, you want to try to experiment with. As you're making your case for why this is a good use of our time, you need to have also a good understanding of what that leadership group sees as value added, right? So if we're trying to make a case for the value of the work we're doing, we need to know what value means to the person we're talking to. And it's easy for us to think about what the value would be for me, or even maybe for the frontline staff who are participating in a Kaizen event. And sometimes it's a little bit different for your leaders.
I think also, in my experience, I've had like one executive that the concepts and stuff click with a lot easier, and kind of getting them to support you in some way. Sometimes that someone else to be in your corner, and kind of just even be like a champion as far as like, I support this work. Let's move towards this is all very helpful as well. It's just finding that right person as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And, we're talking about benefits, and coincidentally, once a month, our co-founder, CEO, Greg Jacobson, sends an email out to the whole company. So Linda and Lynn, you've probably seen it this morning. It's the monthly email that tabulates all of our customer impact numbers that across our entire customer base, the benefits and impact that they've put into their system. So it's more than 1.7 million completed items over time across our entire customer base. That's small improvements, that's value stream events, Kaizen events, projects, tasks. The total financial impact of that is over $7 billion. And money is the easiest thing to add up quantitatively. There are a lot of qualitative benefits in the categories of safety and quality. So it's just everyone reports the data and metrics that are meaningful to their organization. So that's always great to see how those numbers keep ticking up.
Yeah, I agree.
So we've got another question, and this is sort of related back to, well, how do we explain the benefits? But this is a little more specific version of that question that came in. How do we explain, what's the best way to explain the benefits of continuous quality improvement and using data to someone who says, quote, but we already collect data. The problem is that, yes, they collect data, but they don't use it to improve processes and systems. They see no benefit in doing more.
I can touch on that.
Oh, please.
I feel like to try to explain to someone that the linkage between the two, they really go hand in hand. If you want to improve quality, you have to work on those measurements. And by just acknowledging them, that's not going to fix the problem. So really saying, if anything, I think sometimes the quality and the continuous improvement work at organizations start separately and really come together later. And if we would have started that at the beginning, there's probably been a lot of projects where this has been a continuous problem. This isn't something that just happened once. This is over time, and doing a systemic approach with problem solving can help us only fix it maybe one more time. And I think putting that thought to people to get them to understand that, like, how many times have you personally been involved or heard this, and kind of spinning it another way as it's not really about the data itself, it's what you do with it. And if we're just reporting it, we're not doing anything with it.
Yeah, it's very well said.
Yeah. Your comment there just kind of got me thinking, and I also wonder if some of the challenge that we're up against is just people's reluctance to accept that they could be doing better, right? I mean, sometimes you're tracking data and you want to be able to say, look at our numbers, we're doing really well. And it's difficult for people to say that at the same time that they say, but we could be doing better. And so the challenge there is celebrating if the data looks good, which is, my assumption is if this group of people is tracking data but doesn't want to work on improving it, that the data must be in a pretty good place, but figuring out how to help them recognize that we're doing well and we can do better, and that there's value in challenging ourselves in that direction.
Yeah, I think there's a really important psychology there where when certain problems have been there for a very long time, that could be employee safety or defect rates or delivery problems in a manufacturing company. It could be in healthcare, infections, patient falls, things like that. I think, when people care about those results, it hurts to think, well, it could be better and we haven't made it better yet.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, an important thing to try to help people work through, like, showing people the data and the gap and the opportunity can lead to defensiveness of people saying, well, yeah, I mean, it's not possible, or we would have fixed it, and how to bring people along in a way where they feel safe working on that without shaming themselves, even if the organization's not punishing them for it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Making it, especially when they've probably been doing the work in the same way for a long time. And the kind of the typical challenges that you have in continuous improvement of working against the way that it's always been.
I also think, like, when it's always been this way is really where, like, oh, we know this problem, so they quickly, offer a solution in this meeting by people that maybe don't really fully understand the process or what's going on. And that's where, continuous improvement, where the benefit of really promoting that is, like, we've tried just fixing it in this room several times and it hasn't worked. Like, let's move it outside. Let's follow a process and figure out the best way to solve it.
Also, just in that regard, looking at the data that exists. So if this group is tracking data over time, it might be worthwhile spending some time with that data, looking at trends, understanding where the trends have been going up and when they go down, and what some of the causes might be, and really digging in. If this is data that's important to that department, for example, this is meaningful to them, maybe they don't want to change it, but they're at least keeping track of it. If you can speak to that data that's relevant to them, that might be a good starting point for a shared conversation.
Okay, well, we'll probably come back and talk about engaging leaders more later. There's a couple of questions that are related about engaging employees or frontline team members, kind of coming at from two different directions. So I'll read both questions. What are some strategies to overcome employee resistance to change in a lean transformation? And what are some best practices for engaging people in continuous improvement? So depending on how you might want to come at that question.
I'm happy to start.
I feel like this.
I don't care.
You can go ahead if you want to start.
No, it's fine. I'm just. I was just going to say, I feel like you had said something about this earlier, Lynn, which is thinking about that perspective of the employees that you're trying to engage and what's valuable for them. How can you demonstrate that this is work that is going to be useful? Because a lot of times what we're asking is for them to do one more thing. And so it has to feel like one more thing that's helping them to reduce all of the other things. And we know that in our head that that's what's happening, but it's not always intuitive for the person who you're asking to come along on the journey.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I feel like those two questions actually go hand in hand. The resistance to change and why how you get them to come along with you, or kind of go hand in hand. If you understand why there's resistance, I mean, the resistance could be, most commonly, our biggest one is, we've seen this done before. And it didn't stick, or it didn't work, or it was just all this extra stuff, to Linda's point. So I think really one of my biggest things as I trained a lot of frontline staff was getting them to kind of look actually outside the process we were working on, like to where they could apply the concepts to areas that weren't exactly like the area we were studying, and how they, I know this sounds silly, but just like do their laundry or unload the dishwasher, or, the way that they run errands or go to the grocery store. If they could kind of get the concept, sometimes that would help them understand like what we were trying to accomplish. And they're like, yeah, if I, do this differently and it makes it better. So is there a way to apply that concept? So I feel like that's kind of the difference in bringing them along on the journey and getting them to see the light.
Mhm.
I mean, we've all drank the Kool-Aid. We already know that it works. We got to get them there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think like when you can tap into people's intrinsic motivation to make things better, to either tap into that or reignite that spark that I think is there in most people. I think the most difficult thing, I mean, I saw this the very beginning of my career at General Motors. Everybody working on the shop floor had 30, 35 years of experience, and they had been taught or told, check your brain at the door. And there was some new leadership. We had a new plant manager, and new plant manager, Toyota trained, saying all the right things with the right mindsets. It doesn't mean like everyone working there is like, oh, okay, boss, you're different. So now I can flip a switch. And like, people have been burned. And, I think that was at the most challenging extreme of the situation. It's not that those people didn't care. They just kind of developed habits of not participating.
Yeah.
And, even when that's less extreme, that can be a challenge, and it can take time. But like, let's try this. Let's start seeing some positive things happening, as I think you were referencing, Lynn. They can tell you what's in it for them.
And I think too, but part of that is that they maybe have spoke up and said this has been a problem before. No one did anything. And it's kind of like reaching that milestone to say, I'm listening. We're going to do something to fix this, and we're going to do it together.
Yeah. So Linda, you were about to say?
I was going to say something, but it's gone.
Oh, okay. That happens in panel discussion. If it jumps back to you, we'll it's okay. So here's, I think, another interesting question. We have, big companies, small companies, in between, however the whole spectrum of size of companies working with lean and continuous improvement. I think this is a question must be coming from somebody in a small company. How can we start implementing lean practices in a small company with limited resources?
I think that my best suggestion is to keep it simple. And even in companies that aren't small, I find that a lot of times the CI team has limited resources for coaching and supporting improvement. And sometimes our inclination is, when we don't have the resources to be working closely with people and coaching them directly and meeting with them on a regular basis, our gut instinct is to ask that they share a lot of information and a lot of updates and be very detailed in their accounting for their improvement work. But that's a turnoff to them. So this is, I think, a good reminder to take the time to keep it simple, figure out how to create a methodology that's going to integrate well into people's work and be easy to do correctly. And then you can always iterate from there once you have that initial habit in place.
Yeah.
I think also to add to that is, I was recently talking with someone that the company that they were at had spent all this time like basically putting a bunch of ways to put ideas out there or work on projects without ever giving people the training or the resources to know how to do that. And so they're like backing off all that stuff that they just implemented and are focusing more on training. So if there's limited CI resources, make more CI resources by, training and talking and finding. I know we talked about champions on the executive level, but there's definitely people, if you can get, buy-in from your executives to find people within departments or other resources to help spread the message and really get that belief out there, it can come a long way to support whatever, processes you start.
Yeah, that's a really good point. one of the things that we have been spending a lot of time thinking and talking about at KaiNexus recently is habits and building habit loops. And this is also a really good opportunity to spend time thinking about what are the right habit loops for my organization. And the habits that we want to build might be different in a small organization, and they might be, something else in a large organization. But I have found myself in conversations with others recently, again and again, suggesting that we should take some time to talk about what habits you'd like for your employees to be building. What do you want your frontline staff to be doing? How are they going to be rewarded for that work that they're doing? How are they going to be recognized? Because that's one of the ways that they'll see that the work they're doing is adding value, and they'll do it again. But also, what does the habit look like for your leaders who are leading the frontline employees? How are they going to be able to integrate this into their daily work? And we can't overlook that mid-level leadership role in our focus on executives and frontline, which is where I feel like the conversation often goes. So spending time thinking about what those habits should look like is probably a good step in making sure that you're successful in any sized organization.
Yeah. And I will make a pitch for some previous webinars that Greg Jacobson, our CEO, and Morgan Wright from our marketing team did a series of 3 webinars. I'll put a link in the chat when I have a chance. And there's another question I wanted to move to first, though. Again, kind of a flip side of the question, how do we do this when we're small? I think, sure, there may be resource constraints when you're small. There also may be a lack of bureaucracy. There might be a certain agility that a small company might naturally have. Think of a kind of a ski boat as opposed to a battleship. So there's another question that comes at it really more from the large organization perspective. How can we foster a culture of continuous improvement in a large organization with over 20,000 employees where things tend to move slowly? Like everyone has the reasons why it's hard for our own reasons. We work with a lot of big companies. What are your thoughts on some of that?
I think just like Lynn was saying earlier, the first thing is to find your champions, right? So can you create a pilot site with enthusiastic people who are excited to participate in continuous improvement, and then build a use case from that, build a case study that demonstrates the value. And from there, you can gain buy-in from others because they can see that it's been successful somewhere else, and they don't feel like you're guinea pigs, I think that's a good starting point in a large organization, because you can't change everybody at once. And so you have to start somewhere smaller.
Yeah, I agree with Linda. I think there's a lot of tactics that people try to spread and, get consistency. I think one of the barriers is when we do focus on one area. I think it's great to do that, and you can build what good looks like at all levels, from frontline all the way up. But it's then like being really clear on what the plan is for next. Sometimes we don't really think that far in advance. So sometimes we stop and people start doing other things, and not having that standardization can help negatively impact the place where you had the most impact. If they find out, like we just did this here and it's great and no one else is doing it, then that can negatively impact, that work that you did. So I think it's always like, know, train, spread. Like, the whole mission of KaiNexus is spread continuous improvement. So I think you always have to have like that long-term vision on what that looks like.
All right. We are at the bottom of the hour. Normally we do our announcements at the end, but I'm going to give Linda and Lynn a chance to have a sip of water, and I'm going to do some of our announcements here at the midway point before we jump back into things. Again, if you're attending live, feel free to add to the questions by submitting those into the Q&A. A couple quick announcements. If this is your first time attending one of our KaiNexus webinars, as you just heard, our mission is to spread continuous improvement. We are a software company, a technology provider that helps organizations optimize their improvement work. So if you'd like to learn more about KaiNexus, you can scan the QR code, or you can visit our website at kainexus.com. So I also want to tell you about some of our other free resources that we offer to our community of customers and users and our broader continuous improvement community. We do a monthly webinar series that this is a part of. Our next webinar is going to be July 23rd. Karen Freidenberg is going to be the presenter. She's going to be talking about connecting and evolving from enterprise strategy to execution, kind of things related to strategy deployment and how do we make sure the strategy turns into deployment and improvement and progress. So you will receive an email if you're registered for today's webinar. We'll send an email. Registration is not quite open yet. You can also sign up to get those notifications if you're watching the recording of this one by going to kainexus.com/webinar. So that's coming in July. We invite you also to check out our blog at blog.kainexus.com. There's a couple of articles a week on there about all things continuous improvement. We hope you'll go and check that out, read some things. You can also subscribe to be notified about new blog posts. We also have our podcast, where this recording of the Ask Us Anything will be available in the podcast feed. We have episodes, you can see, looking at this old screenshot, a series of Why Did You Join KaiNexus? We released an episode with our new VP of Marketing, Josh Feldman, recently. There's all kinds of discussions and blog post, audio formats, and all. So please check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And then as you leave the session at the end, or if you have to jump off early, we've started making a pitch of, please do fill out the short survey that will pop up or be in your browser at the end. Sometimes when we fill out surveys, you're never sure of it. Is anyone looking at this? We look at these. Your feedback does matter. Your ideas about future webinar topics, that is very helpful to us. So please do, if you can, take a couple of minutes to fill out that survey. Okay, Linda, Lynn, ready to jump back into Q&A mode?
Yeah.
Yep.
And Lynn, actually, thank you for pulling the and-on cord, as we say. Lynn put in the chat that she wasn't saying I made a mistake. I will say it. I made a mistake. I forgot to ask Linda what the Lean Strategy team does. So maybe that'll help kick off the second half of our session here.
I'll say that I made a mistake and I didn't explain what the Lean Strategy department does.
Well,
but
I was supposed to come back to you. So that was me.
Okay. We'll share it. So the Lean Strategy department at KaiNexus is composed so far consistently of continuous improvement professionals who were in the position as customers of KaiNexus. And so Lynn and I both, as you heard from our introduction, have experience being customers and also doing continuous improvement work elsewhere outside of KaiNexus. And so as our department has evolved here at KaiNexus, what we've really found ourselves doing is connecting with current and potential customers and getting to know them, getting to understand their unique approach to continuous improvement, learning about the many different ways that people design A3s and PDSAs and all of the different tools that we use in our methodology. And then figuring out how can we best bridge that methodology that individuals are already using with the technology that KaiNexus offers. And one of the beautiful things about KaiNexus is our configurability, but it also means that that's a challenge to us and to our customers to figure out how to configure it so that it is as easy as possible for employees doing improvement work to do the work that they need to quickly and correctly. and, that it contributes to the improvement culture. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for that overview, Linda. And you mentioned KaiNexus culture. I'm going to go off the list of questions here for a minute and just say, I think one of the beautiful things about the KaiNexus culture, as we actively work to be a culture of continuous improvement, that's what our customers are doing, which we practice what we preach. And I think there is a culture, I think we inadvertently, ended up demonstrating here, a culture of reacting constructively to mistakes and not being focused on the blame game or punitive responses. It's just great to see this ongoing pattern of people being really helpful, people looking at the process and the system. I could have had a checklist, right? So there's maybe a systematic fix that I could put in place for next time. We do have webinar checklists also, by the way, so that's helped us prevent repeating certain mistakes. But that's not so much of a question. But I'm curious if either of the two of you would have thoughts about the KaiNexus culture and either learning from mistakes, preventing mistakes, being a culture of improvement. Like what stands out to you?
I don't think I've ever worked anywhere where everyone was so openly like, "Hey, do you care if I give you feedback on this?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's not in a like you did bad or anything like. And a lot of times they're like, "I struggle with the same thing, so I notice it." And it's a really great place. So it's not something that's just going to come from your leader. It comes from everyone you work with, and it's just you kind of learn that you're allowed and you can help each other. So I feel like that's something that is very different at KaiNexus than most places I've been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you aren't a customer and haven't been on calls with us, you might not know this, but we have an electronic note taker that joins all of our meetings. And when I first joined, that felt really frightening to know that all of my meetings are being recorded essentially, and that not just that, but that I'm going to review them with my manager to see what I could have done better. And that's really it really felt next level for me in terms of being open to improvement opportunities and examining the way that I do work and finding ways to improve it. But it's become so natural, and it's been clear in the time I've worked here that it's so useful that I don't even give it a second thought anymore. So that's a really interesting point, the openness to problems and feedback.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you both for sharing about that. I think with the next question, Linda, you were talking about configurability and implementation. There's a question that I think relates to that. And I know you have some perspectives on this. When it comes to implementation, we have solutions engineers, we have customer success manager roles. There's quite a team effort. Mm-hmm. The question says, do you have tips and suggestions for things to include or processes to use during an in-person session to help a team create a new process for assessing and onboarding technology?
Yeah, so I saw this question because it was one that was submitted before our session today, and I was thinking about it, and I think that if the in-person session that we're talking about is learning a new technology, I think my top recommendation is make sure that you're not the one managing the computer and teaching people about how to use the technology. Find a space with computers, or have a live but not in-person session where everybody's at their own computer remotely, if that's what needs to happen. But have the people who you're training be using the technology and maybe following your instructions, but not just watching you doing the work.
Yeah.
Because adults just don't learn that way. Adults just don't learn how to use a new technology by watching you use it, and they have to be doing it themselves.
I think also, just to add to that, like as much prep work as you can do to prepare like the expectations of what is going to be shared or shown. obviously you don't want to overwhelm whoever's in the training, but I think just, not coming in completely blind to whatever you're teaching them, because I feel like that sometimes creates a barrier where I can't even respond because I'm processing what I'm seeing. It's the first time I've seen it or even thought about it. So you may not get like true um, feedback or like use experience, I guess, what I would say. So making sure that those people that you have participating know what to expect, kind of any kind of prep work that you feel like is necessary. I feel like prep work is sometimes like, oh, I've done this 1,000 times. I don't need to do that. But you have to think about the other people that are in the meeting that haven't done it 1,000 times. So
that's a really good point. Yeah. And for those people who maybe don't do the prep work, or even for the people who do, the other side of that is sending them off after your training session with information on how to ask questions once they come to them, as they're experimenting themselves. Who should they reach out to for help when they run into a problem? And maybe also with some kind of assignment that follows the session so that they can go through some prescribed tasks and you can make sure that they've done something with what they learned and come back to it and revisited it in the coming days.
I feel like something that just popped in my head is that, like, part of the OR process, the optimization review. Sometimes we come in with things that they haven't seen before, and really allowing them to say, "Hey, I want you to look at this and see how it fits you. And if it doesn't, then that's okay. Bring that feedback back or send that back." I think opening up the space to, if options to change things is necessary, that's like something that we can do. So
As a follow-up question, I'll throw in there, tell us more about the optimization review if people aren't familiar with that. That's a big part of the Lean Strategy team's role, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Lynn, do you want to take that? This is your work right now.
Yeah. So we do what we call optimization review for our current customers. Really, the time frame we do them is ranges from a year to every 2 years per customer, depending on what's going on in the customer's world. But it's a deep dive with myself, the customer service representative, and a solutions engineer. And we do a deep dive into the instance of the customer. We look at their everything from their users, activity, reports, data, templates, boards, and kind of say, hey, this is standing out that this isn't the best way that you could be doing this. We think you could simplify this, or we think your users would have a better experience if we did it this way. Or we've learned as a company that's always like improving, we've learned that this is a better practice and we think you guys would like this better. And really giving dedicated time with the champions and whatever staff or team they want to be part of that process to work through that. It's a meeting, but then it's 2 work sessions. I always tell the people going through it, it's a work session. It's not me coming and talking to them for hours at a time. It's let's talk through this. Let's work through this together and make some decisions. And then at the end, we kind of decide upon like what was successful, how are we going to measure that, and it also allows for our customer service, our CSMs to continually support them to reach their goals and have some more ways to support the customer and be a real partner.
Thanks, Lynn. There's another question maybe we can connect to the question, previous question about technology and, at KaiNexus for a long time, we've really emphasized the integration of process and technology and leadership. Technology is not a silver bullet, and it's a matter of integrating it. So this question is different about integration. How can we integrate Lean with existing digital transformation efforts to enhance continuous improvement and innovation?
I have to think about that question for just a minute. So I think that,
if you want to think, I'll jump in and say something.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Give you some space to think there. I think one of the key lessons, it seems, with digital transformation is not just digitizing the way you've always done it. That wouldn't be digital transformation. So I think one example perhaps would be if a company had a classic suggestion box system for a very long time, a paper suggestion box. And they might say, well, that's not working really well because paper suggestion boxes tend not to work well, not because they're paper, but because of a lot of these assumptions, like the suggestion box is locked. It gets opened up by a special person with the key once a month, once a quarter. Some far off team talks about the suggestions instead of talking with the person who had the idea. There's all these different problems. So I think it would be a mistake to digitize that into a quote unquote electronic suggestion box. The origins of KaiNexus were never an electronic suggestion box. It was more of an electronic Kaizen process of, rapid engagement with the employees, identifying a problem, and then maybe having an idea for improvement. Not just what's the suggestion or the solution, but like, let's identify the opportunity for improvement. Let's do so in a local, collaborative way. Like, we can give you a digital platform for doing that type of improvement. And I think, to me, that would be an example of digital transformation with continuous improvement. And over the last 13 years, more and more people are getting on board with that idea, thankfully.
Yeah. I think something that Linda actually does is really important in transforming, I think, of implementing KaiNexus is like really asking the questions of like what's before and after. So like just implementing an employee suggestion program is just one step of the process. What's the before and what's the after? And what do you want to happen? So I think taking that time to not just jump to a solution because they said they can do the one thing we wanted to do, but can it do all the other stuff around? Or if it can't, how are we going to handle that? So I think that that's really important to really enhance like any kind of digital or transforming into new IT equipment. I've seen EHRs implemented across electronic health records, implemented across organizations, and I think that's the solution. But if you don't really think through the whole process, you can have, disastrous effects.
Yeah. That's a really good point too, that that you made earlier, Mark, that you don't want to just copy paste, right? And so I've definitely seen like KaiNexus customers specifically, new customers, they come in and they have tools that they've already been using. And so you have this inclination to just replicate that in a digital setting. And it's just not one-to-one. So thinking about lean and digital transformation, it's worth taking that time to put some brain power toward how does the digital side of this change what this process should look like, and what is the experience that we want people to have, and then how can we build something that speaks to that, and it's not necessarily going to be the same as it would look on paper otherwise.
Yeah. So that's something the Lean Strategy team can help you figure out if you're coming on board as a new customer or an existing customer looking to take things to the next level. Another question here, and I think there's a technology piece to this, so it's a good question for us, I think. How can we ensure consistent implementation and sustainment of lean practices over time?
I think it comes back to habits, right? It comes back to those habit loops. And I know that many people experience the kind of roller coaster where you start doing improvement work and people are on board, and then there's you look away and things kind of taper off, right? And even if that's not really happening, that's the concern. And so sustainment over the long term, a big part of that is how are you building the methodology, the routine, the habit around doing that work so that people are sustaining it kind of on their own when you as the coach, for example, are working in another area of the organization.
And I think like from a like running a project perspective, I always think of like, what did you leave them with to be successful? Like you look at like the sustainment efforts. Did you just, reach the goal and leave? Or did you say, okay, this is like if something goes back, what are we going to do? What are our plans? And I think another great thing is like most places, and this is for KaiNexus, is one of my previous employers, still a customer. And recently I was on a call with him and he said, oh, we just pulled up your work from 2018, that project. Do you remember that project? Because they're revisiting it. And the ability to go back and see what work was already done is impactful. So as organizations like move and change roles and people change positions and it's not the same people, the ability to still kind of know the history is sometimes helpful.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yeah. And I think one of the benefits of, a structured approach to lean, I mean, you could look at, something like a company having a paper A3 template, right? That provides, some form of standardization or guidance for, we can have a standardized problem solving approach. That doesn't mean it's a easy cookie cutter approach of just filling in boxes, but, it can be consistent. It can be standardized. So, there are a lot of KaiNexus templates that people use for A3s, for projects, for problem solving. That can be consistent and standardized. But then I think the other great thing is that it can be improved if people find opportunities for improvement. I imagine, again, part of that may be discussions in optimization reviews or discussions with customer success managers.
Yes.
Fair to say.
Yeah. And I mean, I know it's definitely something that we do try to hit on in our meetings with customers and optimization reviews. And even for listeners who are not a part of the KaiNexus community but are a part of the continuous improvement community, putting a practice into place where you review your current standards. I mean, that's what sustainment is about, right? Building standards and then continuing to iterate on them over time. And so that's how you're going to be able to sustain the work that you're doing, is making sure that you don't just assume the way we do this work today is just going to maintain itself, that we do take the time out to review it, to think about it, to challenge ourselves to do even better. Because as we were talking about earlier, just knowing that work is happening is not enough. We need to also challenge ourselves to improve on the work that we're doing. Yeah.
No, it's such an important point, because sometimes I think people balk at standardization because they think it's carved in stone. And like, well, no, it doesn't have to be. It shouldn't be.
Well, and I think too, when we think of standardization, even if what we said was the standard still exists, the things around that may have changed. If anything, we've learned the world changes and you need to be adaptable. And I really like when Linda just said like a systemic way of like, when do we review this? What does that look like? And revisiting before something becomes a problem again.
So as we're getting toward the end of the session, we've got a question about how to get started. So maybe that would be a good one to end on. And I think, again, you can see the perspective, the background of the person asking the question. I think we can also generalize it. But the question says, where should a sales or service-oriented organization focus first when implementing continuous improvement? So I think there's an opportunity to try to answer the direct question, or even the more general question is, where should you focus first? How do you decide?
I haven't. Go ahead, Linda. I'll let you go, and then we'll see if we agree.
If it's the same, I mean, my answer is always going to be to focus on your customer. Who are they? What do they need? I mean, that's going to be the first place that you should look when you're doing anything, but implementing continuous improvement. What is the work that we can start with that's going to impact our customer, allow us to deliver better to them, and that's going to be meaningful both to them and to our employees.
I was going to say the same thing, and I think I don't know.
Say it differently.
Sales and service. I don't know. Something I was thinking of an area that I don't normally like think of. I was thinking services, and I was thinking, okay, think of someone that does like hotel room cleaning. Like, I don't know why that's what popped in my head, but like, if you were going to implement continuous improvement in that kind of environment, what would you start with? And because I was thinking like, they would have to really understand like what the problem is that they're trying to solve. Why are they wanting to do continuous improvement? Did something trigger that? Or, did they get a new leader or whatever that situation might be? And I was just thinking that, again, understanding your customer, what you need, but also like, it's so important that you're understanding why we can't meet customer needs as well. So I think that's when I think of sales and service, I think a lot about thinking at our internal processes and what's stopping us from meeting the customer goals. Because I feel like in those situations, it's a little bit more, maybe not clear cut, but a little bit more like a little different than some other industries, where your goal is to, have a good turnover or get the sale, and like really break it into like what happened internally with us that stopped that. So not only just focusing on what the customer, but like looking at our processes to see why things happened.
Yeah. Customers as well as external customers as well as internal customers. Right. You can help those your internal customer to better meet the end customer's need, then you're on the right path.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you used the word, I would have answered it in a very similar way. Like, what are your needs? Your needs, meaning the company's needs, your team members' needs, your customers' needs, all together in no particular order. I always fall back on quoting Taiichi Ono in one of his Toyota Production System books. There's a chapter where the header just says, start from need. Right. So if anyone comes to me and asks, the question in terms of like, well, what lean methods should we start with? I'm like, well, time out. I think start from need is a brilliant question. And then, later in the chapter, Ono says, start with your most pressing needs. And, I think in sales and service, as you were saying, Linda, we need to be talking about Lynn was saying barriers. What are we needing to accomplish? Looking at processes instead of, if you will, mindlessly implementing 5S and telling people to put tape around everything on their desks in the sales team.
Yeah.
So
that's a perfect example.
I made an animated video about that some time ago. Have you seen it?
I don't think so.
Linda?
No,
Lynn? I'm going to send it to you. It's we'll end on this goofy note here. It's a YouTube video, like about Office 5S gone wrong. I'll put a link to that in the chat. It's something my friend Dan Markovitz helped me with the script, and it's an animated cartoon about a woman being pestered by her boss about implementing lean, and all she wants to do is improve her marketing proposal processes. And he's like, no, you must put tape around everything in your desk.
It's great. I feel like that's an example that we've all told. So it'll be fun to watch it on a video here.
I've heard and seen stories. So people have said that the animated video is not too far off from real life. But the other thing I'll say, look, I mean, I always try to temper my the temptation to be snarky about things like that, and I've done that. And I'm like, okay, well, sometimes that's not helpful. Like, it might be fun to watch the video and laugh at it, and I think there's a lesson there. But at the same time, I've tried to get better about recognizing what people are trying. What kind of helpful coaching can we give rather than just being critical? So that's my reflection there, and trying to make that more of a habit.
It's a great reflection, giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. And sometimes people don't have a good coach and or any coach. And so I try to be a little more kind, but I still think it's a funny video. I mean, okay. But all right. Well, thank you, Linda and Lynn. Linda Vicaro and Lynn Howell from our Lean Strategy team at KaiNexus. Thank you to everybody for your questions. Thank you for attending or for watching the video. So as I've learned from others, we end things like this by saying, we'll see you next time. Oh, I kind of blew that. We'll see you next time.
That's
Take
great.
two, end with mistake. Okay. Thank you, everybody.